The contract employee is superfluous and unnecessary for the meeting. It is what they informed me. He hardly got a word out before bursting into tears. After only 5 minutes, he was turned away from the competition's final round. Why would they act in that way? He had been putting in a lot of effort every day for this tournament, but they wouldn't even let her take part in it appropriately. I saw her cry and couldn't control my rage. Who the devil ejected her? Present yourself. There was a commotion as I abruptly stormed into the meeting room, shouting. Tom Brown is my name. My age is 36, and I work for an animation studio. I left my former work about a month ago and moved to this one. I was employed at a game development company prior to moving here. Even though the fields of animation and gaming are closely related, some find it odd that someone with years of experience in game development would abruptly move to an animation company. Soon, word got out that my career change must have had a deeper meaning. Although my coworkers are keeping their distance, I'm not sure what the specifics of the rumors are, but they're probably not good. The animation industry relies heavily on teamwork, much like the game development industry does, and most employees in this company have a strong sense of camaraderie. We probably bond over our shared passion for animation even more than we do at other businesses. It is uncomfortable to be alone in a setting like this, and it made my task a little more difficult. Robert, a colleague in the General Affairs Division, was the one who contacted me in this particular circumstance. The only position available was in General Affairs, but Robert, a 23-year-old contract employee who started last year, really wanted to work in the planning department. I hope I get a chance to transfer to the planning department, but it's been tough finding an opportunity since General Affairs doesn't directly involve animation production, Robert informed me. Robert's dream of working in the planning department is a difficult one to achieve. Robert has a great work ethic, even if it's possible that he's not happy with his current position. He's the department mascot because of his gentle disposition, constant smile, and friendliness. Naturally, as my time with Robert increased, so did my interactions with other department staff members. It appeared after a few exchanges that the misconceptions about me were dispelled, and I progressively began forming stronger bonds with people. Amidst this, the business was rocked by an incident. An email distributed to the whole organization started the situation. The email advertised a brand new anim project competition that is accessible to all employees, whether they are based in the corporate office or branch office. It's also a pretty open tournament, with participation accessible to all departments. Despite being one of the bigger animation studios, ours hasn't had many hits lately. It appears that the senior management is becoming concerned about lagging behind our rivals. It's possible that they're hoping to generate fresh concepts and produce a successful show by hosting this competition. This seems like it will be a really competitive event within the organization, and there's a chance you'll get promoted if you make it to the finals. There will probably be a lot of ambitious participants. Robert, how about entering the competition that was announced in the email? What, me? Robert seems astonished by my recommendation. Robert, you have a strong passion for animation, and I believe you can come up with a great idea. I got the chance to ask Robert why he joined this company during one of our chats. When Robert was in elementary school, his parents died in an accident, and he was raised by relatives. He wasn't mistreated, yet he nevertheless had a sense of alienation and loneliness. His solace in those trying times came from anim. Robert has been working toward making shows that can make a lot of people happy because he has a strong passion for animation. Given this information about Robert, I genuinely wanted him to take advantage of the competition as a means of moving to the planning department and potentially landing a full-time job. Is it possible for me to accomplish this? Simply said, I'm from General Affairs. It is true that Robert has no prior planning experience. Since entering the organization, he has worked in General Affairs. It appears that he lacks confidence as a result. That being said, there's no assurance that such an open competition won't happen again. It's more likely that this competition won't be held again, if it doesn't draw in innovative ideas. Robert has the opportunity to realize his goal now. I'll support you as well. You did say that you wanted to work on NN Productions. This is your one shot to realize your ambition. You cannot pass it up. I'd attempted to convince Robert because I wanted to see him fulfill his ambition. You're accurate. My goal is to work in the anime industry. All right, I'll try my hardest. Robert seemed to have made up his mind with my encouragement. I continued to assist Robert every day after that, and the two of us worked on the project. It's done. Robert came up with something he was happy with after a month of thinking. Yeah, I think it's really well done. Robert's effort produced a really good proposal because it was creative and well planned. In light of this, Tom, I'm sure he'll achieve fantastic outcomes. Robert grinned and added, I can't thank you enough, but the dark circles under his eyes revealed how much work he had put in. He had to be putting in a lot of overtime and giving up sleep every day. He put in a lot of work. I sincerely hope Robert's project is selected. The day of the competition's first round eventually arrived, filled with that intense hope. Tom. Robert gasped for air and ran to me. Robert, what's going on? I made it through the first round. Robert came to tell me the selection's outcome, beaming. Well done. You'd survived the first round. I knew it. It's now time for the last round. Yeah, I'm really nervous about the final round. The result of this tournament could have a significant impact on Robert's life. Perhaps it explains why he seemed nervous right up until the last round. The proposal was the only consideration in the first round. However, a Q and a session with the project authors would be included in the final round. As a result, the competitors had to report to the conference room where the championship round would be held. I'm going to do my best. Robert, you'll be all right. Offer it everything that you have. Robert chatted with the general affairs staff just before the competition and then made his way to the conference room, appearing anxious. Since everyone in general affairs had witnessed Robert's hard work, we all gave him our best wishes and sent him on his way. I really thought he was going to return with wonderful news. However, Robert returned to the workplace 5 minutes after he left for an unknown cause, and this time, he had tears in his eyes. The last round could not have concluded in 5 minutes, and from his expression, it was obvious that something was off. What transpired in the last round, Robert? Why are you in tears? I couldn't understand the scenario and was left with nothing to do but ask inquiries. Robert looked down as he spoke for the first time. When I arrived at the conference room, I was informed that contract employees were superfluous and unnecessary for the gathering. I was told that by them. Before he could even finish speaking, he broke down in tears. Things appears as though Robert was simply ignored, and I'm not sure why things got to this point. Why would they take such action? Robert put in a great deal of effort for this tournament every day, but they wouldn't even let him take part in the selection process in the right way. I was furious when I saw Robert sobbing and calling out in desperation. I said, in a low, irate voice, Robert, I'll go talk to them for you, as I made my way from the General Affairs office to the conference room. Who in the world ejected Robert? Present yourself. I let loose and let out all the pent-up rage I had been holding inside of me the moment I walked into the conference room. Robert and the other General Affairs personnel were standing behind me, looking unworried. They had followed me all the way here, sensing something strange about my actions. How absurd is that? Swarming right into this place. One man came up to me and shouted out, "We're in the middle of the final selection." It was David, the department head for planning. Although I didn't know him well, I had heard from others that he was a capable department head when he was in his mid-30s. However, David did not appear to be the wonderful person I had read about, as he expressed his obvious annoyance at my question. "I'm here because it's the final selection." David shot back at me with a question after I said that. "It seems like you have a new look. Which department do you work in?" General affairs. David laughed and clutched his stomach as I replied. What does a handyman from general affairs think he's doing, barging in during the final selection? David kept laughing, but it was obvious he was interested in why I was there. Why did you send Robert away without even letting him properly participate in the selection? David scoffed and started to say something when I inquired. You, Robert? Oh, you mean that general affairs contract employee? We just sent him back home. I was annoyed by David's patronizing reference to Robert as a contract worker. Are you not understanding? It is not necessary to assess a proposition that has no value. Time is wasted on it. It is not worth considering a proposal from a person who typically handles the menial tasks for the organization. You would do that, but why? Robert's suggestion was accepted in the initial round. My subordinates handled the first round. They erred in allowing that to happen. Had I been monitoring, I would not have permitted such a useless idea to be approved. Preserving the company's honor is imperative. A contract employee diminishes the honor of the company. Is that this company's official policy? Yes, it is, for sure. Contract workers are basically unsuccessful individuals who were unable to secure full-time employment. It would undoubtedly diminish our dignity if we agreed to a proposition from such a failure, wouldn't it? David uttered these callous remarks with a sly smile. He said something so horrible. How could he? Even though I was completely unable to hear him, I knew that every word he was saying was disrespectful. His comments simply made me more enraged and increased my level of rage. I took my phone out of my pocket and made a call, shaking with wrath. Move right now to the conference room. When you arrive, I'll give you the reason. Please quick, I urged before hanging up. Who the hell did you just call? With a cocky look, David queried me, not sure who I was talking to. I only said, "You'll see when they get here," while I awaited their arrival. An elderly guy, gasping for air, came into the conference room 3 minutes after I had made my call. Sorry to keep you waiting. It was obvious he had hurried to the conference room since beads of sweat were forming on his brow. Vice President, I've been waiting for you. Or should I say President in acting? The room hummed with amazement when I stated this. Why is the Vice President here? When David saw the Vice President, the self-assured man of a moment before started to lose his cool. He had no idea that I, a lowly staff member, would call in the Vice President. The Vice President has been leading the company as President for the last 6 months, while the President is presently in the hospital owing to health complications. I don't really understand the circumstances. Is there an issue of any kind? The Vice President, who had been called in the last minute, asked me nicely but looked perplexed. The Vice President treated me with such respect, it was understandable that everyone in the room was taken aback. I work in general affairs as an ordinary employee. The Vice President is in close proximity to the top of the organization. In addition, our ages are very different from one another. It must have been strange to everyone to see the Vice President bow and greet me. I turned to the Vice President and said, David over there refused to even consider the proposal just because Robert is a contract worker, rather than explaining to those around me. Did you place that order? Did David do that? The Vice President was astonished and said, I never gave such an order. When David heard his reply, he became anxious. Naturally, it seemed unthinkable that a Vice President would issue a directive that would sabotage a competition involving the entire firm. Although I already knew this, I wanted to make sure that David took the initiative on his own. Vice President, pay no attention to this man. Even so, who is he? Why are you talking to him so nicely? David broke off our chat, unable to contain himself any longer. This man. Be mindful of your speech. The president's son, Tom, is the heir apparent to the presidency. The next president, him. The vice president startled David and everyone else in the room by revealing who I really was. The president of the company, who is presently hospitalized due to illness, is my father. My father requested me to take over as president after he became ill around 6 months ago, and it was decided he would be admitted to the hospital. Though I persuaded my parents to let me follow my own interests before taking over the company, which led to a job at a game company I was always expected to succeed Dad. But as my father's health deteriorated, I quit my work and joined his business to get ready to take over. Despite having the same last name as my father, it's a popular one, so I was able to work without anyone figuring out that we were dating. I remained anonymous because I wanted to observe the business in its true form before assuming the role of president. Workers would treat me differently or withhold information from me if they knew I was the next president. That would prevent me from being able to comprehend the problems facing the organization, so I decided not to reveal who I was. It turned out that I was able to identify the company's issues through my undercover work. David's unwillingness to carry out impartial assessments puts the business at serious risk. I must admit that when the firm announced the competition, I was actually impressed. It was open to all divisions. I felt it was the ideal method for finding gifted people. However, I later learned that the individuals making the decisions were classifying applicants according to whether they were contract or full-time employees. The competition was supposed to be open to everyone, regardless of department or standing, and this totally undermines that goal. David, on what basis are you conducting these evaluations? David panicked and attempted to make excuses when I asked him a pointed question. No, there was a tiny error. It wasn't deliberate. What subject is he discussing? Just a moment before, he declared there was no need to consider Robert's idea and termed him incompetent. Was he really expecting me to forget that so quickly? Or has he been so agitated that he can't even recall what he said? I turned to face the vice president, realizing there was no purpose in carrying on this topic. Vice President, what do you think of David's behavior in this situation? With a severe frown, the vice president, who had listened to everything, spoke. This competition has been totally destroyed by David's efforts. He ought to suffer the proper repercussions. No. David's expression darkened as he heard the vice president's decision. You ought to be sorry for what you did. You are to blame for what is currently occurring, I stated icily. David grabbed to my legs and begged desperately. I'll make a behavioral adjustment and give fair assessments. I ask you, please, pardon me. His weak pleas were very desperate. But I was not going to forgive David, no matter how much he apologized. Values are hard to change in people. Even if I were to forgive him right now, there's a good possibility he would act out again. He must take responsibility for his acts and show sincere regret. David, until a formal decision is made, you are suspended. Get ready for a harsh penalty. My career is over, David mumbled to himself. He instantly passed out from the sheer force of the shock. The final selection was postponed and canceled since it was not possible to proceed in such an environment. Having made it through the first round, Robert will also take part in the final. It's okay for him to be there. Since I hadn't dealt with David personally, I didn't know a lot about him. However, I discovered that this wasn't the first time he had done something similar after chatting with other staff members. It comes out that he frequently treated contract workers like incompetents and had a propensity of being overbearing with them. He constantly made sure their proposals were rejected by sabotaging them. Because of this, contract employees in the planning division frequently leave their jobs after 6 months. In fact, I discovered by looking through historical data that the planning department's contract employee retention rate was really low. This was probably brought on by David's actions. David's employment was terminated due to his behavior towards Robert and his past transgressions. David appeared to have lost everything when he was told he had been fired, but there was no reason to feel sorry for him. The eagerly anticipated day of the final selection came 1 week after David left. After David left, the suggestions in the final round were evaluated exclusively based on their merits, without regard to department or employment status. Robert's idea won first prize following a thorough review. Tom, my proposal won the top prize. Robert broke down in tears telling me the news, overcome with happiness. Robert was moved to the planning department due to his exceptional success in the competition. I told Robert, "Congratulations on your transfer to the planning department," acknowledging his outstanding accomplishment of switching from general affairs to the planning department. With tears in his eyes, Robert apologized to me several times in appreciation and added, "It's all thanks to you, Tom, for encouraging me to enter the competition. I only gave you a slight prod. Robert, you're talented. You earned first prize and were moved to the planning department. Sincerely, I think that." "I'll do my best in the planning department for the company," stated Robert. I replied, "I'm counting on you to keep up the great work," full of optimism for Robert's future. In order to get ready for my presidency, I departed the General Affairs Department. I became president 6 months later, and I've been extremely busy ever since. I made the decision to host the project competition on a regular basis, much like the last one, in an effort to boost the company's flagging performance. Great innovations have come out of these competitions, and the company's performance, which had been declining, is slowly turning around. Enhancing performance is vital, but internal reform is just as important. I changed the company's procedures to stop people like David, who discriminate and restrict possibilities for employees from happening again. To make sure that diligent workers get the credit they merit, we have improved the employee evaluation process. The days are busy and there is a lot to accomplish, but it's all in the service of establishing a calm workplace for staff members. I'm exerting a lot of effort to improve the company environment while carrying the responsibility of my presidency.